Hello everyone, and welcome to Digimon Rebellion, a Digimon Digital Adventure version 2 campaign that has been running now for 11 sessions. For those of you who are looking to not spend 44 hours going back through all of our VODs to watch, which you should, they're great, but I understand some of you may not have that time. So here we go with a quick summary of what has happened through sessions 1 through 11 of our campaign. We first began to meet our Digimon on the factory server, a run-down, terrible place that has been run by Worumanzimon forever now, has been crushed under his heel and constantly spewing out terrible gases. It is a miserable place to live, working to the bone under this terrible dictator. We meet our main cast of Digimon, including Floramon, who is with an adorable Minamon, who hears about a mysterious device that is being created in order to possibly get everyone out. Brought along, Floramon reluctantly decides to join and check out what is going on. During that same day, we move over to another Digimon who's always causing trouble. Coronamon is off with his friend Elecmon, going out to the junkyard in order to steal a battery for this needed project that they are working on. But they're not alone. Ludamon, who has been working alongside with most of Worumanzimon's forces, is more of a mercenary type, unknowing what to do with its life, decided that maybe it's time to switch things up, and decided to follow the pair back to the Free Code Coalition headquarters, the place run by Panjimon, in order to try and fight back. There at the headquarters, we join as we find a Black Agumon who is currently very excited about everything that is to come, and is sparring with one of the members of the Free Code Coalition, Hyokomon, who is equally excited for the day that is to come. Bringing everyone here together, they see this mysterious figure that has given them the plans to make this great machine in order to give them their freedom. It reaches out in the moment of truth, a tendril to each, and the Digimon slowly start to grab hold. As they go around, Floramon begins to see a human working with his father on some woodworking projects in the human world, having received a mysterious device that lights up and calls him to this world. Coronamon, as he reaches out and touches it, sees someone at a campsite, seeming to be setting up and getting ready to go fishing, as Samson is among some friends going along out on a camping trip, which all the more freaks out everyone as he is pulled through to the digital world. Ludamon reaches through and sees Adrian, who is also on this fishing trip, and seems a little more under control and understanding of the situation at large. Black Agumon reaches forth and sees Dylan, who is on his way to look at some different colleges, as he is also just graduating from high school soon. And finally, Gamamon reaches forward and, reaching through, sees a man in the middle of the woods, someone that appears to be hiding something that seems to be up to no good. With Oscar, he too is pulled into the digital world. And finally, Hyokomon steps forward and calls out to Sebastian, our third member who is also at the campsite. The humans find themselves falling through this digital dive into the digital world, falling through an angry cloud that seems to come right for them, scraping and tearing at them as they come falling into the digital world. And, as they come falling in, many of them freaking out, rightfully so, some Digimon start to come through the portal back towards them. Gamamon coming flying in straight towards Oscar, and Hyokomon seeing Sebastian and coming flying straight towards him. Gamamon unfortunately bumps into Oscar, sending him flying off in a direction as Adrian moves in to save him. But in the process, when Hyokomon bumps into Sebastian, he too is sent off into the unknown. And for one of them, they see just the briefest glimpse of someone off in the darkness. Figure that still remains much a mystery to this day. With all of the humans now pulled into the world and several Digimon missing, there was many questions for both sides. Both sides were very confused about what had happened. And so the humans decided to move down into the basement in order to just have a moment to figure out what on earth, or not Earth, just happened to them. Here is where they decided to be able to spend some time, get to know each other, but soon they saw that on the monitors, the enemy forces, the Digimon and Demi-Devimon, were setting up bombs along this generator in which they hid. So their leader, Panjumon, told them to retreat down into the basement, further into the sewers, where they could possibly find a way out underneath the nose of the enemy. Though down here they were set upon by a huge number of Numamon that told them about faith in jumping free of this world into the endless void. Being able to persuade them, they decided that maybe that wasn't such a good idea, and were able to get away from the Numamon, who did point them towards a way out. The local caretaker of the babies, Jezimon, decided it was a good idea to fly out and see what he could find. Unfortunately, he encountered the enemy, as he was snatched out of the air by a Digimon, and several Demi-Devimon came swooping in, ready to fight. The party was able to fight off these monsters, locking many of them out as Panjumon took care of the Digimon for them. And with them stopped, they were able to tie the rope up and were able to decide maybe not everyone can climb that well. Let's not take that chance. And instead decided that the enemy would have retreated enough as they took care of them and decided to walk out, going to the rendezvous point that the Freako Coalition had agreed upon in case things like this were to happen. Here they all gathered around a unconscious Ballistamon who seemed to have been terribly beat up. Reviving it well enough that it could speak, it said that it found an egg, the very first egg that had been found here in the digital world, at least this server, for the 6 months since the great crash that broke all of these servers apart. And that they had a traitor amongst them, that several had been captured and their rendezvous spoiled because someone had betrayed them. So, finding a spot to rest nearby, they decided to rest up for what would likely be a rescue mission the next day. Except that Adrian, playing with his Digivice, discovered a function on his Digivice that was ready, a server gate, which allowed him to pick a new picture, it appeared, and a portal opened up, allowing them to dive away into another server, apparently. So, they took everyone who was ready and willing to leave, and they left. To where? To what? They didn't know. But they decided to leave, going through the digital dive once more, and once again encountering an angry cloud, on their way to what? They didn't know, but hopefully it would be anything better than here. And it turns out they were right. They came splashing down into a lush new area filled with wind, but also a lot of fresh vegetation that was far different than the desolate area that they had just left. Spluttering out of the water, they discovered that they found a Terramon, who decided that he seemed like a pretty important deal, at least to himself, if nobody else, playing around with a Swimmon. After a long standoff, he pointed them in the direction of the city, told them he was a big deal and better not talk about him. So, quickly, as they were moving along, the party came across some Aquilamon, who were looking for someone called the Zephyr, the heir to the throne of their great city. Without too much thought about it, they reported him to the authorities, allowing them to pick him up, and also allowing the party to hitch a ride on the Aquilamon to allow them to much faster get up to the city. Getting through the gate without a problem, even going into town to gain their wing passes in order to be able to freely enter the city as they so choose as guests. There they decided to start to take a look around, first checking out where they had reportedly taken their friend Luxmon. They entered into the Light District, a place where the virus busters of this server seemed to be placed, and, well, not exactly slaves or anything as bad as the factory server had been. They were definitely working the farms and the mines in order to keep the server running. Their leader, Kendo Garurumon, seemed happy enough to see them, happy enough to bring Luxmon in, and when they asked around for someone whom they might talk to that had higher connections, a name Jet Sylphimon was brought up that could tell them a little bit more about what was happening and where she might be. So, heading over to the Clear Gale Tavern, they met the large woman-looking Digimon, who decided to start telling them about what was going on. She hinted at a lot of the politics that were going on. She was not the one in charge, that was Grand Galemon, and that some people believe that the wind creatures of here, the Wind Guardians, should be much more free, much less structure than Grand Galemon tried to force upon the server. And so there was definitely some dissent going on amongst everything happening. And, as they discussed, they showed off their strange devices that brought them to this world to her, and she mentioned that Kendogururumon might be able to tell them more if they were to go back and ask him. So, once again, following the advice of someone else, they did return to the Light Server. But speaking with Jet Sylphimon, she set them up in a very grand hotel. So for their very first night, they had hot springs, a very comfortable evening to be able to relax and enjoy. And talk to Kendogururumon once more about them. And he seemed very excited to see these devices, telling them they were Digivices. They were the devices that were being created by Seraphimon in order to attempt to give them an edge in the war against the Nightmare Soldiers that was happening. And it didn't seem to know a lot of details about them, but they were very important, and offered to do just about anything for the carriers of the Digivice. And began to tell them about problems that had popped up in the mine, as a mysterious door had appeared and some of the workers were having some trouble. Also, when they were here speaking to Kendogururumon, they also heard from a local Kudamon that it had spoken with Luxmon, as Luxmon was missing. And that it had wanted to prove itself, and it had gone off to the mines in order to try and help. Therefore, of course, the party decided that they too wanted to head off to the mines in order to make sure everything was okay. Here they found that it was very dark, but for you here, dear viewer, allow me to lighten things up a little bit. There we go, that's better. So fairly quickly upon moving in, they were able to find Luxmon, who while mildly hurt, was not so eager to get himself into so much trouble, telling them of mysterious rocks flying out of the darkness that had hit it and attacked. So, moving in deeper, they discovered what was throwing these rocks. An angry Golemon from out of nowhere threw a rock at them and began to engage, spewing poison into the air and making it very difficult to fight it, with just some rookies barely able to scratch the strong armor of this Digimon. After a long time, though, it began to realize that something seemed a little easier to attack. Therefore, the Golemon came over to smash down onto Theodore. And in this moment, with the poison coursing through its veins, this is when Floramon realized what it needed to do in order to protect its partner. And we got our very first Digivolution. Floramon became Shorimon. And so, they were able to defeat the Golemon. Then, stumbling around, they found the Gatsumon that were with it, who told a tale of how the Golemon had been driven mad by the gas that was down here. But they also discovered this mysterious pedestal. Putting 2 of their Digivices into it unlocked this door, allowing them to go in and see what had been otherwise inaccessible to the previous people that had come here. Once again, stumbling into the dark, but let me help you, viewer, with that. So quickly moving through this cave, they discovered a plaque that seemed to be to a Fenrir Lugermon, a very dangerous and dark individual that had plagued them during the war. Upon touching a crystal that was in it, the dreaded creature appeared to attack them. Luckily for the party, it was but just an illusion, and upon removing the crystal, it disappeared after threatening to tear them to pieces. Shortly after, they discovered another blue gem that also did that, but this time it was a much nicer creature that appeared before them. They discovered the angel Dominimon, who offered to protect and serve them against the illusory Digimon that attacked. Using these 2 crystals, they were able to move through this area and get through the next door. Here they discovered a large Digimon that appeared to be trapped in some form of stasis and unmoving, along with a mysterious crystal in the middle. After poking the creature for some short time, they decided to touch the crystal, which broke, revealing a Digi-Egg and several other modules for their Digivice inside. But, disturbing the mysterious crystal also awoke Belluchimon, who attacked, being very confused, seemingly put in stasis still in the middle of the war. After being able to calm it down, they decided that they would bring Belluchimon out with them. along with a mysterious voice telling them that the thing that they had found was a code server address, and that these are very important if they are to fix the digital world in its incredibly broken state. And that hopefully its trust in humans was not misplaced. Returning to their inn after a long trek through the caves, they decided it was time to get some rest. But on the way there, they heard a cry out for help. So, being the heroes they are, they decided to go check it out. Here, they discovered an Angoramon who seemed to be roughed up by a couple of Hawkmon. Running up and asking what was happened, they fell right into an ambush that seemed to be going very much for the humans, as their boss seemed to send their regards. As it seemed to be that the Zephyr, angry at them telling on it, decided to send its friends after them. But, of course, going after the humans was actually a big mistake. For as Samson was harried by all of them, barely hanging on, Coronamon stepped in, finding the fire within, and became much stronger as Firemon. Though the humans came out unscathed, in the long run, 2 of these friends were deleted in the process, meaning all the more trouble, it seemed, with this affair. So they decided to rest, and they had a scheduled meeting with the Grand Zephyr the next day. What would Grand Galmon be like? None of them really had prepared for a meeting with a king before. So Jet Sylphimon gave what advice she could to help them out, make sure they didn't make a fool of themselves, and so it was time for them to go and say hi. Here they met with the Grand Zephyr in a grand hall, showing off all of the majesty and power that was of the server, with Terramon being all the more furious at the party, even so far as to lash out at them during the meeting and having to be carried off by an Aquilamon in the middle of the proceedings. But they began to speak of the strange happenings as the party had decided to start to use one of their powers of the Digivice and was starting to fix problems with the world, bringing islands back together in this broken server that they had come across, putting everything back together. Grand Galmon having many questions for them, also being from a slightly different world himself, coming from Witchelney. It was a tense affair, but for the most part, it seemed to go fairly well for everybody involved. But learning that the Zephyr had broken free of the Aquilamon and was vowing for vengeance against the humans who had dared to delete its friends, the party decided to chase after it, though as it went into the night, it got away. But while that was taking place, they said they also needed to have some more friends if they were going to go back and have a chance against Warumanzemon. So, they decided to go ask around the Light District once more for some of those more righteous people to see if they would like to help. And it turns out they did find a couple of people willing to help. The Digimon that they had rescued from his stasis, Baluchimon. But also it turns out when they returned that the Kudamon that they had known had digivolved on his own into Kawatamon, who also seemed like they knew better than everyone else and was ready to go fight in the war. But also before they left, they spoke to Jet Sylphimon one last time, who they told roughly their plans, but also asked if she knew anyone. And she did offer them one that was known as a bit of a wild card, an Airdramon, who greeted them hissing and snarling upon them. But it turns out it was just a facade, as it was actually a much more clever creature. But seeing it was now exiled from the city thanks to Jet Sylphimon's political intrigue, it was tied to the players, so it decided to join the party. For now. They decided to go check out the exiles, for they had heard rumors that maybe one of the people there were someone that Black Agumon knew. So, going off out of the city as the islands had come back together, it was far easier now for them to reach it. Sneaking their way past some Dokugumon by bribing them, they were able to make it all the way into the exile camp. Though it seemed here they could not find the Devimon that they were looking for, though they'd encountered a few faces that seemed interesting, but they were much more focused on finding Devimon. Asking about, he was in his meditation spot and did not want to be disturbed. So of course, they went off to disturb it. This is a Devimon that was very different from many, and it actually helped shelter all of these Digimon, including Black Agumon before the Great Collapse had the Great Crash had torn them apart and put them apart, teaching him and bringing him along. And, finding that his chest was golden, the party decided to take a little bit more look into it, as Impmon, using his powers of latent magic that he has, found something strange lodged right next to Devimon's Digicore and decided to try and extract it, which he did, extracting a holy bullet from its chest, which decided to also remove a lot of the goodness that was in Devimon, and it rose up to attack. Seeing its friend in pain, needing more, Black Agumon stood up and was ready to defend its party. Here is where it found the power within to become Greymon Blue, able to knock out the Devimon enough in order that they were able to put the bullet back in and seemingly fix the problem. When Devimon came to, it did not decide to join the party, but instead gave Agumon a crystal that might help it on its journey to better understand the powers of darkness and how they're not always so powerfully dangerous. Then, the party decided it was time to return to the factory server with their allies in tow. And so, they decided it was time in order to head on back. And that is the story up through the Gale Server. Now they're returning to the factory server, getting ready to fight once more. What will happen there? Well, you can either look at the VODs to find out, or wait until the next summary video. We'll see how well this one does and see if I do another. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're interested in our campaign. We do it every other Saturday over on Twitch and here on YouTube. So if you enjoyed, look forward to that as Digimon meets D&D. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.